But you were talking about the shortage of workers, up here in Ohio, at Cedar Point, the amusement park. They're paying their staff $20 an hour because they're not getting the people from overseas that are coming in. So all the restaurants around there are all closed early because all those restaurant workers left the restaurant to go work at Cedar Point because instead of making, $7-8 an hour or less, with tips, they're taking it for sure $20 an hour. So it's this worker shortage is hurting everything.
And their margins are probably very, very thin, right? That's got to be tough for those, for that operator, right? The operator of Cedar Point. So.
And they still can't get enough workers there where, they can't open the parks as long as they want to. And, it's still a rough go.
Yep. I mean, that's $300 a week. It's not a month. So we're talking an additional $1,200 of benefits gone every month. And, for some families, that's, $1,200 is $1,200. That's to me, that's a good amount of money to me, so.
But there's so many places hiring though. It's, it's not like there's a job shortage.
Yep.
But like Molly was saying before, why, if there is not much of a disconnect from what you're making in unemployment and what you'd be making
Correct.
working, people are going to take advantage of that as long as they can. It's been so long now. It's hard, I think, for some of these people to get motivated to go back to work.
Yep. Until this
$300
a week.
Too,
yeah.
Yeah. And in addition to that, too, a lot of times it's not just motivation. Unemployment for women is like at the rate that it was in the 80s, because who stays home between mom and dad when the kids can't go to work, or when daycare is closed, I should say. 90% of the time it's the mom. Right now, Joshua, my 2-year-old, he had to go to the doctor's this morning unexpected. Guess which parent took him?
Right.
And now I've got a 5-year-old at home. Guess which parent is home with her?
Right.
I mean, so, if you've pulled your kids out of school and now you've lost your job and you're trying to get a job, daycare is expensive. Trying to get them back into school is difficult. So it's an all around problem. It's not necessarily or only because people just don't want to work. It's you can't afford to have a job.
Yep. Especially if you have multiple younger children that demand, some sort of care during the day. That's tough. That's very tough. So maybe I'll write a blog on it. And when you say blog, you mean like an article on it or
just your thoughts?
Posting?
Yeah,
okay.
Just your thoughts.
Yeah, because, I don't know what this will do. I mean, and what I'll also do is I'll look, because Google can help this. I would look to see what is the unemployment rate in the state of Texas, right? I mean, I'm sure, Texas unemployment rate today, current unemployment, right? So, wow, 6.7%.
6.7.
So, and in May it was 6.5, or in May it's 6.5 3 days ago, 6.7 in April. So it's a time study, right? View and export the Texas unemployment overall state rate for for Texas by month all the way back to 1976. And you can kind of see for this calendar year, it's been steadily declining. Basically, right? I mean, in December, it was 6.9. It hovered around 6.9. Now it's 6.5, right? But if you rewind the clock to a year ago, it was just coming off of a high. The highest was April 30th. It was 12.9, and then it dropped to 11.6 in May. And then it dropped again 10.2. So it peaked in April real good and then has basically been trending down. right?
Well, once you take those benefits away, the unemployment benefits, it kind of forces people's hand a little bit. They can't survive on just the unemployment without the extra added
Yep.
going in.
Yep. Oh, it's funny. State unemployment rate for Ohio, 5%. Are you in Pennsylvania or Jersey, Brian?
I'm in Jersey.
Okay, because in Pennsylvania it's 6.9. I don't know what it is in Jersey, but New York is 7.8, Pennsylvania is 6.9. So it's got to be in that neighborhood, right? Got to be in that 7% neighborhood.
Plus,
just like us.
On top of the unemployment benefits, you had all the stimulus checks coming in. So people were able to sit on that.
Yep.
I made out. It paid for my my fiance's engagement ring.
Nice.
It was.
But that's kind of what that was intended for, to get it and spend it, not get it and hold it.
That's right. The last thing the government wants you to do is invest it, because the economy, it's better if you go out and spend. It's even better if you go out and get debt, right? But it's better if you spend it. But yeah, if you look back to pre-pandemic, right? So you call the pre-pandemic January, February of last year, right? You were hovering in Texas around 3.6, 3.7. So around 3.5, 3.75, So if you look at it this way, we're double of what it was pre-pandemic, but we're still well below the peak. And you're right. What happens when the $300 extra a week goes away? What does that do to that 6.5%? Between me and you, fellas, I think that number goes down. I think it goes down pretty significantly.
And the question I have too is, there's a lot more job opportunities available for people. Are you seeing that kind of like in your space?
Yes. It's a good news, bad news situation. I think there are more job openings, and jobs are taking longer to fill. At least that's what our clients are telling us. But on the other hand, hiring firms seem to be much more picky, and not exactly sure why. But I mean, you can speculate, obviously, but I don't know why. But that's what I'm seeing, Sean. I think that's what you're seeing too from your desk.
Yeah, they're being real picky, and not they're afraid to make a mistake, so they're trying to be perfect, because they know a mishire is going to cost them. Where before, some of these companies would, they'll take the chance, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But now they're like, we can't afford it not to work out, so it's got to be perfect. And you put that on us to find that perfect person, and they may not even be out there.
I've got, I was going to say, somewhere between 3 and 4 of the assignments that I'm working on that could fall in that category. It's like, look, we know what we want. It's a very narrow ask. And if they don't have all of these boxes checked, I don't want to see that person. I don't want to, I don't want to talk to that person.
They may or may not be willing to pay everything that person is going to be asking for that checks all the boxes. And so that's the other problem. We're finding these people. We bring it back to the employer, and they're like, yep, they're priced out of, reach right now.
And that's because the talent, Brian, knows they're in demand. The people with that narrow set of skills.
And ones that they know are essential skills now, that no matter what, they're going to survive.
Yep.
And are you finding, because people are coming to you to find that perfect candidate, is there more requests coming in specifically for, recruiting firms to come in and help them out versus, trying to find it in-house?
A bit of a mixed bag. The larger companies are trying to move people up that's creating some, a hole behind them. But these smaller companies that have been running lean, no, they really don't have they don't have a bench, for example. And if they don't have the dedicated recruiting resources, they'll come to us.
And especially if they, some of the first cuts were their internal recruiting teams. If they know they're not hiring, they don't need people recruiting, so they're the first to go. And then now that things are picking back up, you got these HR managers or sales managers or whoever, operation managers trying to do hiring, and they don't like doing it. That's not their main focus. And I think it's a good thing for them to see, because they realize that it's a 24/7 job as a recruiter, not, I can work on an hour today and, be good with it, and with them having other responsibilities, it's hard for them to dedicate the time needed. And, after a while they get frustrated and see that just because you put an ad out on Indeed or wherever, they're not getting the resumes that they maybe would got, 5-10 years ago.
Agreed. The flood of unqualified applicants, it's significant. Lots and lots of unqualified applicants that we see from our posts out there on the job boards, but also from the feedback we get from our clients. We're getting the same story.
Yeah, and I think it's just the ease of applying to these places now is insane. I mean, that's marketing, right? So I'm marketing near New York City for, let's say, Comcast. How many people are going to be applying? There's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, because all you got to do is easy apply on LinkedIn. So I would say technology has been a huge driver of those unqualified candidates, but it's also made it hard for the qualified candidates to get noticed as well. It's kind of been a mixed bag, I think, as well. And for me, knowing that, the first thing that I do is I don't take an application. If I see a company I like and see a job and I apply online, I don't leave it at that. I try and find somebody that I know.
Yes, absolutely.
Reach out to them. So that's been major tip.
Well, that's where I think, recruiters, can really strive now. It's who you know and who's in your network, where, like you said, you can apply, but if you don't know that hiring manager or anyone around there to actually get them to look at it, it may sit in that file forever. And, because they get so many, they can't do them all.
Yep.
Exactly.
Funny Terry stories. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hokey, but it's true. I mean, what about this? I could come on and say, when I first learned, in my new owner training, way back when, with Ron Dermody, Chris Hessen, and Terry McNabb in Philadelphia. That's how, that's back in the day when MRI was based in Philadelphia. We thought that Terry had something wrong with him, that he was hyperactive or something, because he would always walk around the room. Like he would constantly be walking around the room, and you get kind of dizzy and your neck would hurt from trying to follow this man as he walks around the room. And finally, we couldn't take it anymore. It was like, are you okay? Why do you walk so much? And then he shows us his Fitbit watch or something. And he goes, well, I, track my steps every day. And then we asked him, it's like, oh, great. How many steps do you take a day? This guy on average will do 15, 17, 18,000 steps a day, like well over the recommended target for active people of 10,000. That's the kind of the nice round bogey that, at least Fitbit, wants you to do. This guy will do 150, 170% of that on a regular day. And then we just figured out why he was getting all those steps in, because the guy would be walking for 8 hours a day as we're training. Jeez, But we thought there was something wrong with the man. It's like, man, is he okay? Does he have a nervous tick or something? And then we just asked him. So there you go.
Well, that makes sense now during our Zoom meetings when I first came on, and he would walk around his downstairs like you see him going in circles.
You would literally, because that's what he'd be doing in our classroom, because we had a classroom where it was a rectangular room or a square room, and we had a square/rectangle, bunch of tables, right? So, everybody's sitting on the outside, right? So he would walk around the darn room clockwise. And then we were joking with him toward the end of our training. It's like, well, in order to keep it even, do you switch directions after lunch? Where you go clockwise in the AM and then in the PM, you got to go do it the other way, or is it like NASCAR and Indy where you're just constantly making right-hand turns, So again, we didn't know. We had no way of knowing, so there you go. So I'm going to miss seeing him walk around. And Sean, to your point, even in the meetings that we've had during the COVID-19, the pandemic where everybody was on Zoom and Teams and all that, he would just go mobile on his cell phone and you would see his ceiling tiles just running around. It's like, oh my head, right? Because it's kind of dizzying, right? It's like I'm getting motion sick just looking at this poor guy. He's, kind of jerking up and down, and the ceiling tiles are running past. Like, oh, geez, stop, please. You're making me ill. Please, So I'll miss that.
And I remember too giving him calls, middle of the day randomly because I have a question. I've got a Terry question. I've got something I want to pick his brain at. And you would hear him. You could hear, even just on a regular call, that he was walking around.
It's like
he was constantly on the move.
He's constantly walking. It's like, man. And, this is in the middle of the pandemic where, hey, you couldn't go to the gym. The gyms weren't open, right? There is no gym, right? There's no indoor soccer. There's none of that, right? So there's no basketball, It's like, man, I'd be lucky to get 10,000 steps in 3 days. And this guy would get 10,000 steps before lunch. It's like, good grief, whatever, so yeah, it was interesting. He would talk so fast in training that we would pick out every second or third word because, every second or third sentence, because he would be going so fast, right? When he gets excited, he just zooms, right? It's like, geez, So, yep.
100%.